Here we are in a meadow that was planted just this year. It's August now, and this meadow was planted in early May of this year. What we're seeing around me is a lot of annual grasses that are acting as a cover crop, as a nurse crop, that is stabilizing the slope to my right and preventing erosion. It's providing protection for the perennial seeds that have yet to sprout. And it's also providing all this texture and color in the first season in an area that would otherwise be bare. So here we are in another part of the yard, a little bit closer to the house. And in this part of the yard, we actually planted some landscape plugs, which are some of the plants right in front of me. And these are intended to give us a little bit more color in the short term and help the area closer to the house establish faster. And so what we're looking at is plugs that have grown up from about this tall to this height now. And they're establishing well, which is really actually quite a feat this year, because in this location here in Western Massachusetts, we're experiencing a drought for the last 3 months. So these plants have been dealing with very difficult conditions, and they've been able to establish. So one of these species that we planted from plugs is Echinacea. In this case, it's a white-flowered form, Echinacea purpurea. And we also have, growing nearby, a blue lobelia, which is a relative of cardinal flower. It's Lobelia syphilitica, and these are all really tough plants. Like I said earlier, they've been dealing with a drought this year, and they've been able to establish and do relatively well. So here we are in Bobby's Meadow at the Eric Carle Museum of Picture Book Art, and this is a meadow that was planted a little over 2 years ago. It's in its second full season, and it's an example of a meadow that was planted into existing lawn. What was here was this turf, basically, in an old apple orchard, and 2 years later, now we have all this color and habitat. So this is Monarda fistulosa. There's a bumblebee on it. This is also known as wild bergamot. And this is a plant that can seed into existing lawn pretty well because it has small seeds. It's adored by pollinators, and it's really beautiful. So in this case, because we had no choice but to plant into turf, we used something called a drill seeder, which slices into the turf, places seeds in those slices, and then puts the grass back where the score was made and closes it back up again. And that allows some of the seeds to have better soil contact. In other instances, you can just sprinkle the seed directly onto the grass and let it fall through. This is a meadow that is in its third full season. And this is a meadow that was planted from seed on bare ground. So this was a construction site. All of the weeds and existing vegetation was long gone. It was exposed soil, and a new meadow mix was put down that was all native perennials. And what we're looking at now is 3 years later, and I'm surrounded here by goldenrod, and there's also some ironweed growing nearby, and we have some more oxeye sunflowers over there. But if you pan this way, you'll see a little bit of this New York ironweed, which is these purple flowers. And so many of the species that we planted originally have sprouted from seed and are doing really well. So this is 3 years later, and a lot of times that's how long it takes for a meadow to establish when you're using perennial seeds. So here I am standing in a meadow that is about 8 years old, and previously this was all mowed turf. So this was all lawn and was mowed, every week or two on a regular basis. And in this case, no additional seeds or meadow plants were added. So all of the plants that are coming in were here as volunteers. So what we have is a lot of grass and a lot of texture and a lot of habitat that is created for animals and insects. And flowering plants are making their way in as well. That's something that could be supplemented by putting seeds down. But this is an example of what happens when you let lawn simply grow. 3 years ago, this was all mowed turf. And now it's this vibrant habitat. It's providing all this color and beauty, and it's driving the conversation in a direction away from lawns. And that's what Lawns into Meadows, growing a regenerative landscape, is all about. It's giving perspective and tools for you, the reader, to do this,